Yep. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And now Sophia is coming in.
Great.
Now I noticed that most of the Exonians are muted, so you don't necessarily have to follow that discipline, do we?
No. I think you can. We unless it becomes a problem, you can just leave your microphone on, and as long as there's not a lot of background noise that interferes, that should be no problem.
Great.
So I just wanted to say, I think I sent out a copy of what we call our statement of purpose to many of you. I don't know if I had all of you a chance to read it, but I just to sort of reiterate, this group exists because we believe that the climate crisis is a very serious challenge to our world, and that we think that we need to be. It's an unprecedented challenge to humanity. We've never faced anything like this before, and we think, I mean, among other things, we feel that Exeter owes it to all of you to prepare you for the world that you're going to face, because it's not going to be a world that we would like to have it be the way we'd like it to be. But I'm afraid it's, the chances are very high that it will be something that is not what we want. And also, we feel that Exeter is a leading institution. Many people consider it the finest prep school in the world. Certainly, it's the wealthiest. And we feel that Exeter, with the principle of non-sibi that it tries to instill in all of you, Exeter needs to also be a leader in the educational world for all other places to help us channel this. So that's why we're here. That's why we're active, trying to have an impact on the Exeter community. And I guess one of the first things I'm going to ask is just, how do you can you put some words behind what you're feeling about what the climate crisis is, and what you think, how you see it, what you think about your future, and we want to hear what you have to say. So don't, whoever wants to speak first, just you can just start speaking or raise your hand or something, and
Guess I could talk if everyone's okay with that. So I am a senior in this group, and I've been a member of the EAC Environmental Action Committee since my prep year. And what's interesting is just when you were talking about Exeter and our sort of responsibility as our prep school, and our position in academia, I think it's pretty interesting the lack of focus there is on environmental justice and sustainability. Our group isn't one of the biggest clubs, and my freshman year it was 6 of us. So it's a really cool opportunity to speak with you, because I feel as though environmental science in general is not really a big or prominent part of the Exeter curriculum, or just an awareness among the student body.
quick question.
Nicole, could I ask you, Nicole, how many students now do you think are interested? Do you think has it increased since you were your first year, and are people taking it more seriously, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, I didn't really know Ophelia and Saphira until this year, but and Tanya, they're all the co-heads of the EAC. But they've given me a lot more faith that there are people interested in it. And I've seen a lot of younger or students, lower classmen, that have showed up to Principal Rawson's meeting that we had with him at the beginning of the term. Um, but still, I feel as though, especially since club dynamics have changed because of the pandemic, it has affected the interest level. I mean, I would love for my peers to also speak to that, but that's how I've perceived it, at least.
Yeah.
Excuse me for keeping on asking you questions, but when you say Principal Rawson's meeting, was this a meeting just to do with climate change?
It was more so to have him meet the Environmental Action Committee and just like have that have sort of an understanding of his role in our club, and also for him to get to know us and what we intend to do in the club.
Yes,
Does,
and
does
also,
the,
oh, sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to ask, does he meet with all the clubs, or was this something unusual for him to meet with your club?
Yeah, so he actually reached out to us, offering to meet with us and offering to listen to all of the ideas we had for initiatives. And it was pretty productive. We put together a packet of our plans, kind of a comprehensive list, but not all of the ideas were totally fleshed out. If my fellow co-heads would like to speak more on that.
Sure. Oh, go ahead, Tanya.
Is it
I was gonna
possible?
say we can. Sorry, I was just gonna say we can share a copy of our plans with you as well, and we'd love your ideas as well.
Sure. We'd love to see it.
Yes.
Mhm.
And just to kind of add to that, that was very much, it was like the beginning of the term when we met with him. So, I mean, I think we maybe had maybe one meeting beforehand, and all of us co-heads are new this year. But so it was a lot of kind of grandest ideas as well as like a lot of small things we want to do. So we have slightly whittled it down a bit more about things kind of after that meeting, be almost to kind of see where his interests are, where we'd be able to kind of be the most collaborative with the administration / kind of where potentially the most productive kind of places for our efforts are. But yeah, we'd be happy to kind of edit that a slight bit based on kind of how we as a club have started to look at those ideas and send it to you.
Great. Can I ask, are there any lower classmen on this call, or are you all seniors?
Yeah, I'm a lower.
Oh, lower even. Great, because we want to, I mean, we'd like to establish connection with people who are going to be around for more than just this year too. So I don't, are there lower class, other members of lower classes that are part of, or that are active in the
I'm
club?
lower as well.
Oh, good, great. And then I had another more general question. You've talked primarily, I mean, you are all part of this club. Does awareness and activity around climate issues happen more in the club, or rather than in any kind of classwork you do?
I think there's definitely like an absence. Oh yeah, my name's Chris. Yeah, as I said before, I'm a lower. Yeah, I think there's definitely like a lack of environmental related work outside of, you know, the club and just like in general on campus. I mean, to start off from the educational piece, there's I think only like 3 or 4 related like environmental courses. So, you know, getting more kids to like be able to learn about it would be like a great thing to do as like a starting thing. I think also just overall education and like regarding like climate change and environmental action is like really important on campus, because like I think a lot of people just don't really think too much about it, and like especially with like composting and like recycling and like trash and stuff, people don't seem to care too much about it. So it doesn't seem like people are thinking too much about it, besides you know, maybe after like they throw out their stuff. But sometimes people don't even think about like where they're putting their stuff after they eat. So
Yeah.
I have a
Additionally-
question about that, which is what makes you guys special? Why are you paying attention to this, and why are most of your classmates not?
I think that most of the members of EAC are people who cared about climate change mitigation before coming to Exeter, perhaps, or even upon arrival to Exeter, they realized that it was a big deal and they wanted to act. I think one of the important things that Chris mentioned was that there are 3 or 4 elective courses that are related to climate, well, yes, climate science, not climate change and what students can do to contribute to its mitigation. So I guess when we're thinking about a climate change curriculum at Exeter, an important thing to think about would be making the curriculum mandatory in some way for all students, because the people who are signing up for the other classes, for the existing classes, are people who already care or are interested about it, interested in it, in the science of it too. So something that we were talking about was the interdisciplinary nature of climate change and climate activism. So we didn't think that it should just be focused on the science of climate change, but also, climate activism in English literature, climate activism in history, things like that.
Great.
That's really excellent. We had a very nice chat with Principal Rawson yesterday. And he gave us a long list of activities on campus that are meant to lower the academy's carbon footprint, and gave us less information about coursework. Now, when he met with you as a group beginning of the semester, did he talk much about coursework, or was it mostly about physical plant improvements that were going and are ongoing now? I mean, it continues, and I guess that there's a whole report that's due for a presentation in January about climate change activities on campus and what the future might bring for not just activities, but for coursework. But he didn't reveal a whole lot about what might be happening with respect to the ability for people to get into or to get into non-elective courses in the campus. So I really like your thinking, Safira. I think that's terrific.
I know one thing we did in one of my classes last year, in anyone who took physics, in our spring term, one of our units, we did, it was like feedback loops or something, and then for our final project, we were looking at examples of those in the climate and in climate change. And that was pretty cool because we were able to apply the physics, what we were learning, to climate change. I think that's something we could definitely incorporate more into the curriculum, because we were still able to cover everything that we needed to in the course, but then we were able to apply it in a way that is specific to climate change and learning about that.
Just kind of adding on to that, I think one of the big issues is how teacher dependent it is, because as far as I understand, that was never something that came up in my physics class personally, and I think it was very much you have to cover feedback loops, and that certain teachers were like, oh, I know climate systems is a massive feedback loop, and I personally am going to bring that, but it was no mandatory, you have to touch upon its connection to climate change. And I think with that list of activities that you're talking about, the big issue is, I guess, because Exeter is a very busy place and everybody's very kind of pulled for time. Without making it mandatory, it's very difficult for kids who would even kind of have an interest to get to do it, because everybody's really busy, and it's like, oh, I'm interested in this, but I could get an extra hour of sleep tonight if I get my homework done earlier. And that's not really a fair choice to be making. So adding it into the curriculum is kind of a way that I think is a really important way and a really interesting way that we could kind of let people do it without them considering it an extra load onto them.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see how many students there are here. Is that because you're sort of on vacation now and you're not as busy as you normally are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just wondered. So in general, if on a for us to try to have a meeting with a group, you wouldn't be able to. Not as many of you would be able to do it because you just would feel that you could spend the time. Is that right?
possibly. Although
Yeah.
this is a pretty important meeting, so I think we would make time.
Well,
Okay.
we like to think so.
Is there something that you, any of you, could recommend that we can do to assist you?
Well, I think like the integration of, or I see that you like have a dialogue with Principal Rawson and you're going over a lot of plans outside of the curriculum. But definitely kind of what Ophelia was getting at, that it's very like teacher dependent or even course dependent, the integration of climate science into coursework, because I don't know if anyone else here has taken the environmental science sequence, but I'm currently in it and I just finished up my term of ecology. And not only did we have very little talk about like the deforestation issues or New England's changed environment, we were like using outdated sources from like the 1940s.
Oh,
Yeah, so it wasn't like I would just like to speak from my own experience that there was very little integration of climate science within this so-called environmental science sequence.
Wow.
I have another question, unless it's more of you want to respond to that, which is you, is there any connection in your mind between capitalism and climate disruption?
I see some heads
And-
nodding.
A lot of nodding head.
Hey, we
Yeah.
might as well go straight to the core here, because I hope you all understand that we are totally on your side and want the school and the country and the planet to wake up and smell the coffee. And I think part of us, or at least I will speak for myself, hoping that among you will emerge a whole bunch of Gretas and that you will spread the word and do whatever action is necessary to get the attention of the school or of the community.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. I may be the only one of our group who actually had an educational track that took me into a lot of environmental science. I have a Master of Forest Science degree from Yale School of Forestry, now called School of the Environment. And I went there thinking that maybe I would get into industrial forest management internationally, because I happen to pick up languages fairly easily. But that was 1968 when I arrived in New Haven. And boy, the word environment was just, just beginning to be a common term that was being kicked around. And it was about the time when the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act were passed by Congress. And it was an incredibly exciting time to be there. So I shifted my career path and wound up working for environmental nonprofits almost exclusively for my career, mostly in land conservation work here in New England for nonprofits. But in my short lifetime, I've seen manifested what climate change has done to habitats and to forested ecosystems, throughout the New England states. And it's really frightening, what's happening so fast. So I think to bring that kind of an education and appreciation for what's happening out there down to the high school level is critical.
And Joe, I thought it was really interesting that you brought up capitalism, because specifically at Exeter, there is a lot of money. And I know a lot of students come from lots of money. And that's just interesting to think about in the context of environmentalism at Exeter, because we know, I guess, almost like statistically, that like the people who are the wealthiest people are the people who feel the effects of climate change the least almost. Um, so I think that does play, I don't know, I feel like it does play a role in how people think about climate change, and like who is really like not taking it seriously. But I think that the amount of money at Exeter does play a role in how we look at climate change as well, because a lot of us look at it from a very scientific perspective. But there's also different aspects like activism and political parts that we could also look at too. But yeah, it's just interesting, I think, to think about like the students who are coming from wealthier backgrounds and how they, because there's a much higher concentration of that kind of way of like growing up and living at Exeter, and how that influences how we think about climate change too at Exeter.
Yeah.
So Tristan, would you say that there seems to be some kind of maybe contradiction between what Exeter is offering in courses or about climate change compared with some of the wealthier students who are there who seem to feel that maybe this doesn't apply to them? I mean, is that what you're getting at too, or not? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just, curious, what your thoughts are.
Sometimes I just think it's interesting, just from my experience with people I've met, how I guess the way, because there's also a big socioeconomic range at Exeter, and so how people from different places in that range think about climate change and also their role in it has a lot of variation. I found that corresponds with kind of where they kind of sit, not 100%, but it's kind of a general trend, I think. I mean, there's a lot of different parts to it, it's more nuanced, but I think that Exeter is unique in the way that there is a lot of money, and I think that's as opposed to a lot of other places, especially in like the United States. And so I think when we're talking about ways we can help the Exeter community to be more like environmentally aware, that is something we should probably might want to take into account, because it's sort of feature, I guess, very unique to Exeter, but that shapes the way that you view the world very heavily.
I have a question. Were any of you at Exeter in the spring of 2019 for Climate Action Day? Remember when the keynote speaker was Co Barrett, who was the American one. She's one of the three co-chairs of the IPCC. Were any of you there? I don't do. Oh, I see. So, so do you remember? So I guess it means this question. This is talk about capitalism. Do you remember? So after her talk, there were questions, a lot of questions, and I was there. I was very impressed with the questions. I think the first 5 or 6 came from women, not boys. But I believe it was the next to last question came from a boy who was in the balcony, and he just set up. It was a 1-sentence question. He said, "Is industrial capitalism compatible with addressing the climate change?" And the room erupted in applause. And I mean, that was a question sort of drilled right down to the essential question. And so I don't know. I don't know who that. I never did get his name, but I thought that was a pretty striking moment for me in my. And I was glad to know that there was probably a 16-year-old or maybe student who understood that that's an important question that we have to deal with. So
yeah, there's a kid named, just for a little bit of clarity on that, there's a kid named Malcolm in my grade, and every time he asks a question, they're very well thought out, but every time he asks a question at an assembly, like the whole school like claps for him. It's kind of like a weird semi-tradition, but
well, I don't know
yeah.
whatever that means, but it's
Go ahead, Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, you're
Sorry.
muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I know. My Wi-Fi. Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you are now.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I think at the talk with Principal Rawson, he mentioned divestment and his, how he was not meant to averse to it, but that he didn't see it as like a viable option. And I thought that was interesting, just like past, students coming from money. Our school itself is like incredibly wealthy, and his unwillingness to like, not that he hadn't considered the question of divestment, but just like not seeing it as feasible kind of struck me as something we could change, something we could work on, because I do think it's not necessarily always about the practicality of it, but like the principle of it. And like, I guess that relates kind of to the question of capitalism and stuff like that.
Well, actually, when he spoke to us, he mentioned divestment and endowment, and he didn't talk about practicality. He said he was, in principle, not in favor of it for his various reasons. But we told him from the beginning that we were not interested in talking about divestment, and not that it's not important, but we didn't want to focus on that, and we didn't want to focus on all the efforts and the very good and important efforts made on campus to reduce the carbon footprint. What we wanted to talk about was curriculum, and we never. He never spoke to us about curriculum really, except to say that there were, some courses, and so the idea that brought our group together originally was about putting the climate crisis issue into the Exeter curriculum. So if you read our statement of purpose, that's what we're talking about, and that's what we'd like to talk to you about. It's clear to us now that a course that we think is appropriate and necessary will not be able to get on the Exeter curriculum in the foreseeable future for a lot of reasons, because that's the way curricula work. But that's not the end of it. That means it's up to you. It's up to you to educate yourselves and your classmates about the crucial issues that underlie the climate crisis. So our generation, when we were a little bit older than you, when we were in college, there are a lot of social issues coming to a boil. Women's movement, environmental movement, civil rights, and students were very active in all these. The Vietnam War was one. And I was at Harvard, I was in Asian studies, and the Harvard president, the Harvard administration, Harvard faculty were not anti-war. Some faculty were, but basically as an institution, it was not anti-war. And there was not a single course at Harvard about Vietnam, about the history of Vietnam, Southeast Asia, Vietnamese language, culture, anything. We had to learn, we had to educate ourselves as to the true history of Vietnam. It's earlier history, it's the colonial history, World War II, post-World War II, France, the US involvement. We had to teach ourselves that. We had to research that. And as part of the movement that we did, we held teach-ins in the Boston community where we imparted what we had learned to community groups as part of the effort to mobilize anti-war effort. And frankly, the student movement in the US in our generation was a crucial factor in ending the war in Vietnam. Not the only factor, but a crucial factor. So today, in terms of climate crisis, we think that there's a real parallel. It is up to you, it is up to the youth, it is up to your generation to lead this and not to be dependent on the institution. No matter, there will be a few faculty member who who expressed some interest in this. And the school is doing the right thing as far as we can see in terms of moving on the carbon footprint. And that's all well and good. It's a good place to start. It's not a good place to stop. It's up to you to educate yourselves and educate your classmates. So we have this idea about putting an entire course together that runs the gamut, starts with science, but goes through economics and politics, and and drills down to the relations of humans to nature. And so that's a huge spectrum, but it's very it's what's necessary. And you could do that as a club. You could set up a year-long program of study, and there's no one teacher who could teach that. There's no different people would have to come together to prepare different presentations. But that is the learning experience that you need. It takes time, but you should do it as a club. And what you learn from that is going to help you in everything else you do academically at Exeter. So these are this is the principal idea that we want to discuss with you. And so, we're interested to hear any reaction you have to this idea and this proposal.
Yeah, you don't have enough to do, right?
Just to clarify, when you met with Principal Rawson, he said that it would not be possible to create an official Exeter course on.
No, he said, we have courses, and frankly, we can see this one course, it's EPS 450 or something that's on climate, and that's the only course we can see on climate. He said, but basically, we already have courses, and the course that you described is that's not a course. That looks like a college major. That's out of the question. That was basically he didn't say that's out of the question, but that's what he meant. And so that was the extent of the conversation. He was basically dismissive of it.
Well, if I could add to what Joe Dwight is saying, I think also Principal Rawson made the point that at Exeter, the faculty develop the courses, and
Right.
so there does have to be faculty initiative to develop courses. So if there were a group of students who went to a faculty member or members and said, look, we're really interested in this, we'd like to take a course on it. Could there be a course on this maybe starting next fall? Then that might help move things along a little faster. So, that's what I took out of our discussion too, which is maybe not exactly what Joe took out of the discussion.
Yeah, but
I agree with Nat. I agree with Nat that what Principal Rawson was reflecting is the fact that academic coursework is developed by the faculty, and it takes time, and it takes faculty interest. And our reaction to that was that as alumni, we can't really effectively affect what the faculty wants to do. But as students, you may be able to have some impact.
Right.
If you, for example, using your senior paper as a vehicle or something like that might be able to develop some cross disciplinary thinking in this area. But the realism is that it's a slow process to develop coursework at a place like Exeter. And so turning on a dime is not their strong suit.
And another idea too in our group, if Carl Goodwin would like to speak up about this, because it's really his idea. I don't want to take this away from Carl. But I mean, if any current student, either this year or next year, had some kind of project in environmental science or climate change area, and it required some funding because you had to spend some time off campus or do some research or whatever. We don't have anything particular in mind, but alumni do have money and we can raise money. And, if a student wanted something for some kind of extra project that had faculty supervision, to be sure, but if there were funds needed, it might be possible for alumni to come up with some money to help fund something like that. So if that interests any of you or any of your friends, that's also worth talking about. Again, it would have to have faculty, supervision and so forth. But I mean, that could be a possibility.
Thank you so much for that generous offer.
Yes. And we can certainly put something together to try to present to the faculty. Principal Rawson did offer to meet with us a second time, so we could bring that up to him in that meeting. And he seemed pretty open to kind of support us in whatever proposal we brought to him, as long as it was within reason. And this is within reason.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of
One
adding
of
to
the
that.
things that, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, just one quick thing I wanted to add, as I'd also be really interested in what he would have to say about incorporating units into already existing curriculum. Like, it's kind of crazy to me that like we've got a lot of kids at Exeter who go on to run businesses and have a massive impact on the business sphere. So that's somewhere I think we could have a massive impact by just including in economic courses, or there's like a capitalism and its critics course, just maybe shorter, not as in-depth as they should be, units about climate change in that context. So even if it's not kids seeking out an environmental or having to spend or spending a year deep diving into climate change, they're seeing how climate change is going to be directly impacted with a field that they're interested in. So did you guys, as people have kind of met with Principal Rawson around this topic, would you think that's something he might be more up for? I do know there's been a few people who have done senior projects working on curriculum. I haven't seen like the full impacts of them, but there's a few students I'm kind of thinking about already to reach out to you about that, but about kind of the faculty side of things. But yeah.
Well, we understand there's the most flexibility in curriculum is with senior projects, where if the students have an idea they want to research, they can basically ask a teacher to put together a courses almost tailor-made to their interests if they have them. But that's already at the senior level. But what we have seen, particularly Andrew McTammany, who is the sustainability coordinator, and in whom Principal Rawson has a lot of confidence and hopes that he's going to be able to move the ball along on curriculum. And I see him as kind of the point person for that. He has expressed that the goal is to have all of the students exposed, and it not just be the ones that are interested to go all the way to those senior level courses that are either biology or ecology, but have it earlier in the curriculum and much more extended. So I think they would be extremely interested in finding ways to do that. I mean, I think that the person to talk to, as much as Principal Rawson, but Principal Rawson is always so busy, but I think the person who I thought actually was in direct contact with the clubs was Andrew McTammany.
Yeah, he's our advisor, our club advisor.
Great.
Right. But can you explain to us a little more? Because if you look at the webpage, there's supposed to be 15 or 16 different clubs that are connected to environmental issues, but we only saw descriptions of 4 of them. And so it gives the impression that there's a tremendous amount of interest in environment, but then we weren't able to find out exactly what it is and what those clubs are doing.
Yeah, so the pandemic impacted, as someone already mentioned, the pandemic impacted club involvement in general. So we know of, I think it's 4, including ourselves, major clubs that are involved in environmental action. But there are a few more that are kind of like offshoots of that idea. And I think our long-term goal, or one of our long-term goals, was to kind of unite all of the existing environmental clubs under one umbrella and kind of form different branches of concentration, like political outreach. Tanya and I are also co-heads of the Exeter Climate Lobby, which is focused on political outreach, and EAC is supposed to be kind of on campus, and we're also working on this international project as well, international collaboration. So so those are just some ideas that we've been thinking of. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it definitely does. It's mainly a core of 4, and even
Yeah.
those 4 are connected. The 2 you mentioned, EAC and the Climate Lobby, and the other ones are kind of at another level. They're kind of offshoots. So
Yes. So yeah, they're not necessarily solely focused on climate change activism or climate activism, but they're related in some way.
Right.
Is Sunrise Exeter operating?
Yes. So that's under a national.
Right.
Sunrise is a national organization, and Sunrise Exeter is the Phillips Exeter Academy branch of it.
And is that active at Exeter?
Yeah, Phoebe, do you want
Many
to?
people involved in it?
I was involved with it last year. I think it was like many pandemic clubs struggle with membership. We're trying to come together because there's, across clubs, there's there's a decent number of people who kind of each club is kind of lacking access to because they're only committing to one environmental club a week. So we're kind of trying to come together so we can kind of have a more united base of people to do, so we're more productive. I don't know how active Sunrise has been this year. I've seen a few emails about their meetings, but I'm not super sure. Has anybody else been a part of that one? Or?
Yeah, they had a couple of meetings, but I can definitely say that other clubs are doing way more, and I think it's due to pandemic because a lot of the members of Sunrise Exeter had to leave after coronavirus started, and it kind of influenced the dynamics in the club.
I mean, they're not at Exeter anymore. They had to leave Exeter.
No, I mean, and they had to leave the club.
Oh, just leave the club, right?
They had different priorities at that moment.
Right.
One of the things that we can offer besides money is a network of our friends and of other alumni that may or may not be Exonians, but who could weigh in and be of assistance, perhaps in course development or just some information. And certainly I imagine others of the white hair types that you see in front of you. I'm more than happy to be to answer questions, to be a mentor, to be a listener, to be an elder, to be in any capacity that could be used to help you feel more comfortable, help you maybe resolve a problem. That's on all this. We really care about you guys.
Thank you. I
would echo what Joe just said. And I'll mention that one of the ideas we've kicked around is the possibility of I guess, instituting or getting the academy behind the notion of having a year-long series of presentations by people from the outside world about the climate crisis, coming in and talking to the student body on various aspects of climate change and its effects. I'm just wondering if you think that would be well received. Is that one way to get the whole student body up to speed with the seriousness of the crisis, do you think?
I see some heads nodding.
Yeah,
how about Greta Thunberg? How would you like to have her come
Maybe,
speak?
yeah. Would you like to have Greta come and talk? Listen, I have something to.
Why
propose.
not? Why not? Seriously, why not?
Yeah, I mean, we've thought about that. I have something, a different kind of thing to propose, but it is like an outside speaker. So I was a French teacher, and my involvement with this began in 1972 when I got the book that had just been published called "The Limits to Growth," a very important book in the environmental movement, talking about this general picture of how of the culture that we were operating under, where growth is like the thing that makes that's the ultimate goal. And another person who read the book at the same time, just 4 years younger than we all are, is a man named Richard Heinberg, who's spent his entire life writing books and doing research, and he's the head of an organization called the Post Carbon Institute. He has his most recent book, and what he feels is the sort of the summation of his life, is a book called Power. And he just gave a presentation on Monday, an hour-long presentation that I have a recording of, where he runs through what the book is about and answers a bunch of questions. And I would be glad to provide you with a link to that presentation if any of you want to take time to just look at it. And it's big picture stuff about what the future, what the possibilities are for the world, being realistic about what we can do. So that's a very good place to start. And I think it's I know him, he's a friend, an acquaintance, and he would certainly be somebody who could come and talk if we ever could get that. I've even talked to him about that in the years gone by. So I'd like you to consider that. So if there's, I guess I could send it to Ophelia. I've her address and other people, and then she could distribute it as you like. So
let me just fill in following on that. You guys don't have time, we do.
Right.
We can do research. We can suggest articles, movies, anything. And we've been doing that anyway, but but it's no good for us to do it. We need to help you. So if you have research projects or ideas or anything, and you just want to run them by somebody or say, look, I need to know more about X, let us know. And then we'll get back to you. From my point of view, when we talked to Ross, and his whole focus on, to the extent we talked about curriculum at all, was on science. And from my point of view, science has nothing to do with this. This is not a science problem. We know what the solutions are, and they have nothing to do with technology will save us. If anything, technology has driven us into the ground. And I think the real issue personally is addiction. And the addiction we have is primarily fueled by fossil fuels. It's just, for anybody who's been up and close personal to the power of a fossil fuel versus, say, a shovel, you know very quickly that why farming, why everything in the world has shifted. Even the whole slavery issue has shifted from people to equipment, and none of this is smart. And so we want to make sure that we don't get derailed by looking at solutions or ideas that, while they're helpful, they really don't go down to what is causing people to make the decisions they make that perpetuate this problem.
Yeah. I like to say that we don't have a problem, we have a predicament, because we've created a situation that doesn't really have the kind of solution that we'd like, that a problem suggests that you have a solution to. And what we have to do is try to make what is already happening and going on no worse than it has to be. And maybe eventually slowly leads in the other direction. But this is like nothing that humanity has ever faced before.
Chris, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I saw that you wanted to say something before. Is it still something?
Oh, yeah, one thing that I wanted to ask before, I think, as like one thing that would be a good improvement would be assembly speakers. And I know you guys mentioned Greta before, but I think just having this entire year, or so far this term, we haven't really had an environmental related speaker. So having like people who could come in and like just talk to us, I think that would definitely have like an impact, because there's not really much time that like outside of school, to learn about this kind of thing. And I think like having like an assembly speaker would be a way to reach the entire audience of the school, and just for like a set of like 45 minutes. But I think it would definitely get some people like learning about climate change and make sure that like maybe our knowledge isn't just like inert, I guess.
So Chris, for you or any of the other students, if you or an individual student wants to have a particular speaker or a speaker on a particular topic like climate change, how would you go about? Is there a faculty member who's in charge of trying to arrange and recruit? Okay, so you or a group of you could go to whoever that person is and say, we'd really like to have more speakers, or at least one speaker on climate change. Is that how it would work? Okay.
Yeah, so the two things that we have done as co-heads have been, I think we've submitted individually speakers that we would like to have during the assembly. Fee, you can talk about your person that you always like to mention.
Oh, I mean, I personally have a personal dream. I'd love to see David Attenborough come talk because he's been a person. I was like,
course, yeah.
I know we have an assembly committee with 2 students from each grade and a bunch of faculty on it. So that would be kind of the person to reach out with. I think the biggest challenge is they make a huge amount of their decisions way in advance. So I know for this year, we really felt like we completely missed the window because they spent a lot of time talking about over summer, and clubs really kicked up in person this fall. So by the time clubs started meeting regularly, the window had pretty much completely passed for offering assembly. So the real only kind of chance we have for speakers is Climate Action Day, which is kind of already set aside from in the schedule as an environmental speaker. So, you know, that regular assembly, we're not adding a huge amount. Yeah.
Also,
but if someone like David Attenborough, you know, volunteered to come to Exeter, it seems to me the powers that be might be willing to juggle the schedule around a little bit to accommodate David Attenborough. And, you know, again, if David Attenborough needs an honorarium of $10,000 or something like that to come, maybe some alumni could come up with, you know, some money to do that. So it's worth proposing. And even if, you know, the window is closed for this year, it's not too early to start planning for next fall. You know, so.
That's
Well,
great.
first
There
of
would
all,
be,
have his films been viewed widely within the student body, do you think, or not?
I mean, I know a few people who it's like, most of the people we have talked about, it's like been kind of a start of a passion when they were younger, versus again, it's being like people who are very specifically interested. You know, I mean, I'm personally British, so his name's very well recognized around kind of where I'm from, but I would say he's a relatively well-known figure, even if those films haven't been seen by everybody. But yeah, again, I think it's that issue of people who are actively interested in the environment, or, you know, in my case, lucky enough to have parents who kind of instilled that in me from a young age, kind of putting that on the TV. But yeah.
Also, I think another person, I'm sorry,
Okay.
another person is Al Gore, who did An Inconvenient Truth.
Sure.
That series was my inspiration for getting into climate activism. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Did someone? Oh, yeah. And I think something that we also talked about was having next year's theme be environmental action. So for example, last year it was 50 years of coeducation was kind of like the theme of the year. So what we proposed to Principal Rawson during our little talk with him was to have this theme, and he said that we should talk to the trustees and that they would probably be willing to kind of fund and organize whatever was needed for that, for the entire year next year to be environmentalism.
Well, let me say, I know you guys are all busy. You have all kinds of priorities. But from our perspective, there's nothing in the world that is more important to you than climate science, climate disruption, the climate crisis. It's going to affect your life more than any other issue and affect you very severely. So it is, in terms of getting something on the curriculum at Exeter, if everybody keeps up the pressure and gets good response, maybe something will be added by the time you guys have graduated from college. That's not going to, happen in any meaningful time frame. It's up to you to educate yourselves and educate your classmates, and to do it with individual senior projects is something. But again, that doesn't reach out and that doesn't mobilize. So if you really want to make use of the Exeter environment as a pedagogical learning institution, really you should think about putting together a program, and that could be integrated with bringing in outside speakers, but to address the entire range of issues. It's like Joe says, it's not just science. You got to start with the science, but Attenberg, Gore, Heinberg, Greta Thunberg, they're not scientists, but they have to know what they're talking about. You all have to know what you're talking about. You have to have some basis in the general science, but you've got to understand the economics and the politics and organizing and communicating and dealing with misinformation and disinformation and denialism and all the issues that stand in the way of really addressing this crisis. So I really hope you can put some thought and effort into doing something like that.
Yes, I second that. I wanted to go back to the curriculum issues, because I looked at all the courses I could find on the in the catalog, and I checked with some of our more knowledgeable members. I mean, I'm the least knowledgeable about these subjects. But Joe and Conrad, all of those, they're really in Joe, the two Joes, and Wit and everybody else. But I found a lot of things that I thought were really interesting, like the history course, which to me, it's called Humans and the Environment.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really, the description of that course just traces the whole history of how things that worked well at one point for humanity turned against humanity and are now destroying it. And the description of the course is very much aware of those destructive forces, and the readings there I found and checked to be up to date, and things like Sand County Almanac, which is a classic for people that know about climate change, and all Tom Wessel's Myth of Progress. There's another one, and then a whole bunch of recent readings that I've tried to read. I've tried to get up to the Story of More. I saw that in your readings. So I was a little, when you were mentioning that there wasn't that much presence and that it was kind of behind, it was old stuff, that surprised me. I just wanted your reaction, because the other one, the one that seemed to have most direct, there's an EPS, I don't remember what, I think it's Earth and Planetary Science 450. It's called Earth and the Climate Crisis. That has, and then there's another one called Bio 470, which is all about resource consumption, population pressure, all the things that have to do with economics.
Yeah,
So
I'll be taking that next term.
Good.
Well, where I was going with all this is I think that it's not only McTammany, who's a chemistry professor, but you seem to have a whole bunch. Some of the names I found was Eve Southworth, for instance. She seemed to be kind of but she's behind one of these courses, and the history teacher that's teaching that humans and the environment. It seemed to me there are quite a few faculty members that have just to write the course descriptions they wrote show enormous sensitivity to these preoccupations you're hearing from our group. So it sounds to me that it would make a lot of sense to find them out and talk to them and to get them to extend their offerings in such a way that they're not only at the very end of the, just for senior years, and they can somehow innovate, because this is all about curriculum innovation. And as Joe Dwayne was saying, that's really difficult in academic institutions, because the teachers all have their territories and they have to negotiate between each other, and it's a slow process. It's an academic process. So, but you guys could really speed it up by encouraging, showing interest in these course offerings, and we're looking for ways in which they can be offered earlier and more comprehensively, and with more of an impact on the whole student body.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know for a lot of those electives, a big issue. I mean, I think the two science ones are pretty well taken, but I personally don't think I think I've yet to hear of somebody who's taken the history. So I think it often has a problem of, a lot of history electives don't always have the people to run them. So I think, that I think is really, thank you so much for raising it, because I definitely think going to those faculties is a really great starting place. But I do think it's like essentially the problem we have some people who are interested in it, but what we need is, I guess, that starting one to like ignite that interest. But they do sound like really great resources as teachers of people who have developed a climate curriculum in an interdisciplinary manner, especially for that history one. That could be really interesting. I know quite a few people had to leave at 8 / have to leave soon, but you guys have given us so much to think about. Really, really grateful that you guys reached out and for the amazing work you're doing. We'll meet as a club, just kind of talk through some of the ideas raised. There's some people, because of time zone issues, who weren't able to make it today, so we'll get them back up. But I will also send a follow-up email with everybody's kind of emails and contact information from this meeting. So if you need anybody to follow up, you can do that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for meeting with us. And I hope
and you can follow up with us if you'd like to meet again sometime or do anything, don't hesitate. You know how to reach, just reach one of us, and then we can get the word around. So,
I'll definitely be in touch.
Let's build on what we've started.
We did a fair amount of talking, and if we have another meeting like this, it'd be great to get more questions from you. We didn't give you a chance, much of a chance. So, but like Joe Simon said, we're really foursquare behind you and want to do what we can to help.
Yep.
Thank you for finding the time to do this.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your support, and we'll definitely be in touch in the future.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Nice to meet all of you.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Really
Bye.
appreciate it.
Have a nice night.
Night, night.
Bye-bye.
Well.
Hey, we lost a lot of people all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, that's so. I mean, Joe Dwayne is going strong because it's early in the morning for him.
Yeah, he's 7 o'clock in the morning.
He has the whole day ahead of him.
It's 8:05 right now.
Yeah, it's 8:05. Yeah.
Did you already do your morning running?
No, I don't run in the morning. No,
Have you done your Tai Chi?
I do Tai Chi later in the day.
Later in the day, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was good. I mean, that
Really
was
good. Really
Yeah.
good. And here comes Whit. Whit's coming back.
Yep. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Well, this is. I mean, I don't know that we need. There's. That you got the recording. Send it to me as soon as when it's convenient.
Okay.
Just send it up, John, and I'll get it up, and then Jim, who couldn't be with us, will be able to watch it, and we can look at it again if we need to. But yeah, I thought that was a good beginning.
There was an excellent beginning. I really do. And it was wonderful that they were able to spend the time, talking to their grandfathers. It was good.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think they were pleased with what they got, though. That's my sense is that they were.
Yeah, I was surprised that there seems to be such a limited awareness among the student body. It sounds to me now like, at least in terms of all the work that's being done on the footprint, there's more coming from the faculty and administration than the Exeter student body
Yeah.
in that area.
Yep.
But I think there's still, a lot of deficiencies in terms of, faculty and administration awareness of what's needed to really educate the kids to the issues that are of such overwhelming importance to the rest of their lives.
They seem to take to the notion that jumpstarting things for the whole student body and for the faculty for that matter too, by having a series of people from the outside coming in and making presentations might be, a good place to go.
Yeah, they did seem to.
Yeah, the one thought that I thought was really a great opportunity is, if last year the subject was, I think it was women last year, role of coeducation, 50 years of coeducation.
Right.
And this year it's been the whole thing about, racial equality, and that's been the whole thing.
Equity, diversity, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not using the right word. I'm trying to remember what the word whatever, systemic racism or something like that. That's not the right word either. But then so her idea was, why can't next year it be about climate change as a central issue for the school?
Why not?
That would be just phenomenal, because that would go right together with whatever plan they come up with and all the communication that comes out of it, and that would get everybody, going in that direction and mobilizing everybody else. I think that would be just superb.
Yeah. We could come up, and I'm sure the faculty members could too, with quite a list of stars out there. I mean, who could come and talk. Bill McKibben. I listen in a small group to a fascinating series of presentations at a workshop in Eastern Maine. And this was about 6 years ago. The presenters were U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service scientists talking about what's going on in the Gulf of Maine. And it's scary as hell. There are whole islands, there are islands in the coast of Maine that have been abandoned by nesting seabirds like terns after, who knows, a couple centuries of use. And they're abandoning those nesting colonies because they can't find food for their young. And the food they can find, the young can't eat because their bills aren't big enough to take in the abundant type of little fish that are out there. That, the normal food sources have left the Gulf of Maine, or are not within striking distance of these nesting sites. I mean, absolutely fascinating, but scary. And you can't, that the soft shell clams in Casco Bay are virtually gone because of the acidification of the ocean. So now man is intervening by taking used clam shells and oyster shells and putting them out on these mud flats. And that sort of helps a little bit, but it's not the same as the natural ecosystem. I mean, there were those kinds of presentations, and my head was just going, holy shit, we are in BFT, big fucking trouble, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a huge range of possibilities, and I think we'll be challenged to find out how we can be most effective in helping them take the next steps, because it's they can't get all the way to where they need to be in one giant step.
No.
So but if we can help them.
The other insight is this idea of that I think I understood that Ophelia was talking about, the fact that you have electives in the catalog doesn't mean that they're actually taught.
Right. I did. Yes, I hadn't thought about that, but
yeah, that to me it means it's there as a nice showpiece, but if you don't get the minimum number of students for it.
Yeah.
That's right. It almost sounded like she indicated that you might not even have the faculty member. I mean, that it was dependent on things that I don't know what it does depend on, but it looks like electives just doesn't do the job at all.
That was important to learn. I mean, I had never thought that was a possibility. So
yeah.
The other thing I was surprised about with Ophelia was that where was her British accent?
Yeah.
Yes.
she's a fake.
No, I bet she can do it beautifully when she wants to, but she's melding in.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And John, thank you for sending me that link to
cool.
the presentation. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I certainly will.
Yeah, a lot to talk about there. Connor and I have talked about it some, and I'm trying to reconnect with the speaker there because there are a whole bunch of issues. I'm working on a whole bunch of things before
This
I
is
send
Alan
the questions,
Tooze.
so that
Yes, choose.
so that they can,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
hoping we can have him on a call.
Mhm.
So that because he's a real insider. He runs this this European policy group and he advises the German government.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting and a lot of new things, certainly new things to me. We can talk about that. Hopefully we'll make some progress on that issue, on those issues.
Yeah, he's really prolific too. So the things that
Yeah.
he comes up with every day. I mean, it's amazing. He must have a staff helping him do that.
He just produced these two books, a book on the 2008 crisis and then a book on the climate crisis already came out. And right now he's working on the climate change book. That's all he does right now is climate change policy. And he was in Glasgow and he was watching this whole thing. And just today I read about 7 different articles he wrote about Glasgow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you link those? Can you give us a link to read those?
I absolutely will. Yes. Yeah. Well, you can link into his own blog, which is
I do. Is that all on there? Is that where you get it?
I think it is. Well, I'm not sure. There's one called Ones and Twos.
Yes.
And there's another one called I think just him, some blog, but he is a very, very close friend. I mean, we've done long trips with him and I know him really well. I know his wife really well. He's a fluent German speaker, he's a native German speaker.
Where does he live?
He lives in Columbia. He's a professor at Columbia. He's their number one economic historian.
In New York.
In New York City.
In New York City. Yeah, that
New York
Columbia.
City, yeah.
At Columbia, yes. Okay.
At Columbia, not Columbia the country. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that particular presentation is more kind of a cocktail hour presentation because it's the clients and so on.
Yeah.
So it's a little too Hollywood-esque, or I don't know, or showy somehow. But there's some of the other ones that are just very, very scholarly.
Yeah.
Well, he had a particular audience, so he had to speak to the house, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. He's basically servicing the clients, his wife's clients, and they're making money off it because with COVID, they weren't able to do anywhere near as many trips. They had to cancel all the trips. So what they do is they have these lectures and you subscribe to them and so on. Yeah. Interesting.
Well,
all right.
Well, good.
Well, this was great. And we'll reconvene around the next time whenever we will see where this takes us.
Great.
Super.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Good.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thanks everybody.
Yep. Thanks to everybody.